The snow fell in thick curtains across Highway 47, turning the world into a monochrome blur. Pedro gripped the steering wheel tighter, his knuckles white against the black leather. Beside him, his daughter Elle pressed her face against the passenger window, her breath fogging the glass. "Dad, can we stop soon? I need to use the bathroom," Ella said, pulling her pink winter coat tighter around herself. "Just another 10 miles, sweetheart. There's a rest stop coming up," Pedro replied, squinting through the relentless snowfall. The weather report had called for light flurries, not this blizzard that seemed to swallow the road whole. That's when Elle gasped. "Dad, what's that?" Through the swirling white, something glinted metallic and wrong. Pedro slowed the truck, his heart hammering. Off to the side of the road, partially hidden behind a snowdrift, sat what could only be described as a craft. Not a plane, not a helicopter, something else entirely. Its surface shimmered with an iridescent sheen, and scorch marks streaked along its hull. "Stay in the truck," Pedro commanded, but Ella was already unbuckling her seatbelt. "Dad, look, there are people out there." She was right. Two figures huddled against the craft, their forms barely visible through the snow. Pedro's instincts warred within him, the sensible part that screamed danger, and the human part that couldn't leave anyone stranded in a blizzard. Humanity won. "Stay close to me," he said, grabbing the emergency kit from behind the seat. They stepped out into the biting cold, wind immediately stealing the warmth from their bodies. As they approached, Pedro realized these weren't people at all. The taller figure stood nearly 7 feet, with elongated limbs and skin that shifted between blue and purple hues. The smaller one, clearly a child, trembled violently, its large eyes, 3 of them, blinking in distress. "Dad, her child is freezing," Elle cried out, rushing forward before Pedro could stop her. The alien mother, for that's clearly what she was, turned those multifaceted eyes toward them. Her mouth opened and sounds emerged that Pedro's mind couldn't process, like music played through water. But the universal language of a parent's fear needed no translation. It's okay," Pedro said softly, raising his hands in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "We want to help." The alien mother pulled her child closer, but the little one was barely moving now, its skin turning a sickly gray color. Without thinking, Pedro shrugged off his heavy winter coat and wrapped it around the alien child. The mother made a startled sound but didn't pull away. "Elle, the thermal blankets from the truck. Now!" His daughter sprinted back through the snow, returning moments later with their emergency supplies. Together they wrapped both aliens in the reflective blankets. Pedro noticed the craft's door hanging open, cold air rushing into what must have been a climate-controlled interior. "Your ship. It's broken," Pedro said, pointing. The mother seemed to understand, gesturing frantically at a panel that sparked and sizzled. "Some kind of heating failure. We need to get them somewhere warm," Elle said, her teeth chattering. "Dad, we can't leave them here." Pedro looked at his truck, then at these beings from another world, then at his daughter's determined face. The sensible thing would be to call someone, but who? The authorities? They'd be hours in this weather, and the child might not have hours. "Help me get them to the truck," he said. The alien mother initially resisted, her body language defensive, but when Pedro gently lifted the child, showing only care in his movements, something shifted. She followed. Getting them both into the truck's back seat was an awkward affair. The mother's limbs bent in ways that seemed anatomically impossible, but they managed. Pedro cranked the heat to maximum, and the vehicle filled with blessed warmth. Ella climbed into the back seat, sitting beside the alien child. "It's going to be okay," she whispered, even though the child couldn't possibly understand. But somehow it seemed to. The gray tinge to its skin began fading, returning to a healthier purple blue. The mother reached out a 3-fingered hand and touched Elle's cheek. The gesture was so tender, so unmistakably maternal, that Pedro felt his throat tighten. For 20 minutes they sat in that truck, the heat blasting, the snow piling up around them. Pedro used his phone, miraculously still with signal, to call for help, though he kept the details vague. Stranded travelers seemed safer than aliens. The child began making small chirping sounds, and the mother's posture relaxed. She looked at Pedro, then at Elle, and placed her hand over her chest in what might have been gratitude. "You're welcome," Elle said simply. A strange humming filled the air. Through the rear window, Pedro saw the craft beginning to glow. Whatever emergency power it had left was coming online. The mother carefully gathered her child, wrapping Pedro's coat tighter around the little one. She paused at the truck door, looking back at them. From a pocket in what Pedro now recognized as a form-fitting suit, she withdrew a small crystalline object. It pulsed with soft light. She pressed it into Pedro's hand, then touched her chest again. Her meaning was clear: thank you. Remember us. They watched as the two aliens made their way back to their craft, the mother carrying her child with renewed strength. The door sealed behind them, and within moments the ship lifted silently from the snow, its surface shimmering brighter. Then, with a pulse of light that briefly turned night into day, it vanished into the storm. Elle and Pedro sat in stunned silence for a long moment. "Dad," Elle finally said, "do you think they'll be okay?" Pedro looked at the crystal in his palm, still warm, still pulsing with that gentle light. "Yeah, sweetheart. I think they will be. Because of us? Because sometimes being human means helping whoever needs it, no matter where they're from." He ruffled her hair. "You were very brave tonight." Elle smiled, that gap-toothed grin that still made her look like the little girl she'd always be to him. "We both were, Dad." As Pedro pulled back onto the highway, the snow already beginning to ease, he glanced at the crystal on the dashboard. Tomorrow there would be questions, maybe doubt about what they'd seen. But tonight, a father and daughter had saved two lives that had traveled across the stars, only to find hope in the kindness of strangers on a frozen highway. That, Pedro thought, was the most human thing of all.